In this video, we're going to talk about the headspace of the 7.62 Nato. Now, the 7.62 Nato, 7.62 by 51, has a civilian cartridge which somewhat is identical, the 308 Winchester. But, and this is something I did not know, the headspace gauges and distances on both of these cartridges is different. Okay, I didn't know that 7.62 Nato has its own separate gauges and measurements. And this is something that's brought up when with the FR8s and especially the FR7, where's the headspace? Because the FR7 is deemed to be unsafe and the action not strong enough, and it stretches over time. So the best thing to do is check the headspace. And it's kind of good to check the headspace on any old mill surplus guns. I have, but I've really only found one gun in all the years that I've collected that was out of headspace. And that was a mismatched one of them Turkish Mausers in 8mm that came in a few years ago with all the bayonets and sold for like $100. One of them was the only one. Okay, so what are headspace gauges and what are we measuring? We'll take a look. Okay, these are your headspace gauges for a bottleneck rimless cartridge. If you're doing something rimmed, the gauge may look different and it works differently. It'll either be a disc or a wafer or something really short with a flange on the end here. And you're only measuring with a rim cartridge the space between the bolt and where the rim ends up. That's how you headspace them. Like a Mosin Nagant or something, the gauges will look different. But for anything 30-06, any bottleneck cartridge, 30-06, 308, just about all the Mauser calibers will use this. How this measures this distance, 1 inch 635.5, is this goes into the face of the bolt. And you close the bolt, or even on a semi-auto, you close the bolt. This engages where in the chamber the shoulder of your cartridge is. So you are measuring the distance from the face of the bolt to where this is precision ground, where this should intersect with the shoulder inside the chamber for the cartridge. Okay, that's how this works. And that's why there's two different dimensions. Okay, because this distance is different and the bolt will not close on the longer one supposedly. That's how they work. Alright, with headspace gauges, generally you should have 3 in a set. Some people only buy the no-go, and but you should have, if you really want to check the bore, especially on an older military gun, you should have the go, the no-go, and the field gauge. And generally what the difference between the three is like this number here. 1 inch 630, 1 inch 634 is usually 5 thousandths. So this is why this is kind of confusing to me. Most of them will be like 1/630, 1/635. And then a field gauge will be 1/640, another 5 thousandths. So from minimum to maximum, with most calibers, you have 15 thousandths of play or room to move with. Okay? Generally, go, no-go, the 5 thousandths, that's where you're golden. You got no problems. And I've had guns that would just barely close on a no-go, but wouldn't take the field gauge. They're still safe to shoot, even though it's getting close to the 5, maybe 6 thousandths. So what do we have? All right, so I have a set of older gauges that I used for a 308 rifle. I had them years ago. And it's 308 Winchester and 243 Winchester, because that's the parent case, and all they do is neck this down. So the chamber is cut to the shoulder about the same distance. It's just the throat and the caliber changes. So you will find some that cross like this. So 308 and 243 use the same gauge. Okay, so when you close on a go, it's 1 inch 630. Okay, and the no-go, which the bolt shouldn't close, is 1/6/34. It kind of should be 35. Okay, why it's 4 thousandths instead of 5 thousandths, I have no idea. Now, I did not know that 7.62 Nato has its own set of gauges, so I have 2 sets of gauges. And what we got here, okay, we only have a minimum and a maximum. So at Nato, 1/6/355, it's kind of odd. So 1 inch 635, which is about the no-go. It's a little bit more, thousandths and a half more than a civilian no-go, is the minimum. Okay, and the maximum is 1/6/455, 10 thousandths, a 10 thousandths difference. So using this, that 10 thousandths, 5 and 5, yeah, that's about normal, 10 thousandths. You can go maybe even, like I said, the extreme maximum is 15. But 30, 40, yeah, that's about a 10 thousandths difference from a civilian no-go. So the NATO guns are going to headspace long, as they say. So 1/6/45, forget that, 1/6/35. Okay, so this one's pretty tight. And I never seen it that tight. They should have a field gauge, but those are the numbers we're looking at, and that's what we're measuring when we use the gauges. Okay. Okay, the proper way to use a headspace gauge is they give you the instructions to take out the ejector and the extractor and all that and get a correct measurement. But the number one thing is make sure the gun is clean. Okay? Don't just take a gun. I've seen somebody shooting an AK and shoving a gauge, no-go gauge in, and that's not how it works. Okay, and actually this is the wrong way too, but we're going to go with the 308 go gauge. I'm just going to jostle this around in there, try to line it up. Okay, and then once you get it under the extractor, which I did just there, okay, you go up with light pressure and you turn the bolt down and it closes all the way. So this took the 308 go gauge. Okay. So this means that the chamber's cut deep enough. If it was shallow and you didn't cut it deep enough, it wouldn't close on this. Now we're going to take the no-go, which is 4 thousandths longer, and got it engaged there. And now when we go to close this, it just about closes on the no-go. Okay, I think it's not going all the way. So let me take a look at that. Now it is closing. It's closing all the way. So that is our 1/6/34. Okay, closes on a no-go. which it should be a thousandths longer and shouldn't close. So we'll get our Nato cartridge. Our Nato cartridge, the minimum 6355 is 1.5 thousandths longer than the no-go, the civilian or the 308 no-go. So this would be like, you know, that's the only difference, 1.5 thousandths longer, which ain't really much. You do, in a way, have an extra. Come on, get in there. Okay. Alright, so it took me a bit to get that up underneath the extractor. But as you see, that extra thousandths and a half, that is under the extractor. It does not close. It won't go down. That thousandths and a half, it won't come out of there. Alright. So that's a civilian chamber in this, it's a compass, Thompson Center compass. Okay, and that's just a sporting rifle chamber. You can see the minimum NATO won't close on it. So let's go on to our guns. Okay, now with our first FR8, we have the civilian no-go gauge in there. So if you took a 308 gauge, it would just swallow it. Okay, the 308 no-go. So, going to take the NATO minimum, and it closes. So this closes on the minimum or the go gauge for NATO. And now we're going to see with the max, which is 10 thousandths more. Alright. It's not closing. Okay. So, this gun headspaces correctly for the NATO cartridge. And we'll do this with this other FR8 real quick. Getting the hang of this. And I'm just going to go with NATO minimum maximum. I'm not even going to fool. It's the max. It's the minimum. And yes, these gauges are expensive. They're about $100 a set of 2 and more than for a set of 3. Alright. Minimum. Closes. And someone once asked me, how do you headspace a gun without headspace gauges? You don't. It's as simple as that. Okay. And again, don't close. So, we know these two guns are safe. Now the one in question. The FR7. Everyone, this thing ain't safe to shoot and everything else. Gonna go with our minimum. Get it up under there. And we close. As you see. See this one here, cock on close, you should have it disassembled, but there, it closes all the way. So that takes the gauge. That means we're good on the minimum. Now the maximum, because some people say that the chambers here stretch, and this gun does have wear, so somebody's shot this rifle a bit. So I don't think it's not ever been fired. Okay, now we go with the no-go, and it don't close. Sorry about that. So it don't close. So we're good. Chamber's good. Headspace is correctly. So that's how you kind of determine your headspace. And according to the gauges and according to the information I have, these guns are safe to shoot. Now, why such a vast difference? You know, that 630, 455 is 10 thousandths more. That's like a field gauge going in there. But that's, I guess, how the NATO chambers, and it does say that it does not match up with the specifications for 308 Win, which is basically kind of the same cartridge. Alright guys, that's how you headspace. That kind of answers the question. And why there's such a difference between the NATO and the civilian 308, I'm not sure. It must be because of ammunition variances and that. But there you have it. Hit the like button, subscribe, and stay tuned.